I'm sure by now, if you have been watching the channel, then you are aware that I personally believe that Ripple and XRP will completely revolutionize the way that money is moved around the world. They will essentially be, two pieces of the new financial future as well. And the system that we are currently running on is definitely really, I would say, going through a massive, major fundamental change. And most of the world is not even focused on this. They don't even realize what's actually going on. And it's right in front of their faces. So, with that being said, welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. And also, if you guys are not in the free Discord already, I highly advise everyone go and check it out. Join it, check what, information is in there. We have over almost 9,000 members in there alone. There is a ton of free, valuable information in there. So what are you guys waiting for? Go and click the link at the top of the description below. You won't regret it. Now, with that being said, I have quoted Zoltan Pasar for a very long time. He actually has a theory regarding the Bretton Woods III movement. Essentially, this would be a new world monetary order, and it would be based on commodity-backed currencies. Now, what's crazy about this is, he does talk about how we are moving towards a digital-based financial system as well, and how all of this will actually kind of work. He also does mention, he mentions cryptocurrencies as well, being a part of this. But if we're thinking about what's going on, we are starting to see significant changes happening right now in real time. We actually have here, where does Bretton Woods III come from? Well, this is the current monetary order. It's based on the strength and liquidity of the US dollar. Its strength comes from the financial markets in the United States being the most mature and open in the world. Its liquidity is backed by the depth of the dollar market as well as the depth of the euro dollar market. Euro dollars are dollars created outside of the United States. Think of them like a fiat version of the US dollar stablecoins. Now, as we do think about this, right? Where does all of this really kind of start to flip a switch? Where do we start to see, a big shift happening? Well, here we actually have a full prediction of how this basically plays out. Number one is inflation and interest rates in the US will rise. We already saw that for like the last couple years. The demand for commodity reserves will rise. Again, we are already seeing this in real time. Almost every single central bank out there is stockpiling massive amounts of gold. The demand for foreign currency reserves, particularly for those of geopolitical rivals, will fall. And again, as we think about this, it is starting to change in terms of the overall scenery around dominance when it comes to reserves. The demand for dollars will fall because non-dollar trade will rise. And again, we are already starting to witness that, especially around a lot of the BRICS nations. Supply chains will become less efficient and thus more expensive. The EU will get energy commodities from sources other than Russia. Russia will sell more to China, and the Middle East will sell more to the EU. Now, we haven't yet, seen this in a very big way. Again, a lot of it has been kind of trickling a little bit, but so far, it's not in a very large way to the point where it's like so noticeable. Also, the world will go from our currency, your problem, to our commodity, your problem. Commodity exporters will increasingly demand payment in non-US dollar terms. Now, a few nations around the world are starting to kind of accept non-USD, payments for commodities, but not in a way like this. Deglobalization will continue. Countries will hoard commodities to become more autarkic. And listen, as we really look at this, right, he's not predicting a collapse of the US dollar or anything like that. He's essentially just starting to, show you like, listen, we're on a path to dominance being usurped around the US. But as we really think about this overall prediction around Bretton Woods III and how things are starting to change, you got to remember that as we look at crypto, we're starting to see a shift towards a digital-based financial system. I know that we think about crypto as, all right, this is an escape from the financial system that we know about and things like that. But what's really happening here is these projects are actually being adopted by the banks. The private sector and the public sector are actually collaborating in a very large way. And I think it really kind of comes back down to the Finternet, right? which the BIS did post back in April. Now, the Finternet is basically the financial system for the future. Now, you might be saying, all right, well, Nick, you're kind of losing me here a little bit with the gold and then the digital-based financial system. Don't worry, we will tie this all together, and I'll try to make it as easy to understand as possible. But what the Finternet basically means is the whole world is connected. The whole world is connected. We have tokenization, we have unified ledgers, all financial transactions on chain, everything, is all digital as well when it comes to this. And if we're thinking about that, okay, all of the central banks are stockpiling massive amounts of gold. All Bretton Woods III really is a commodity revolution. It's a commodity-backed financial system that is digital, okay? When we're thinking about this, if they want the financial system for the future to be on ledgers and on chain, and tokenization will live through all of this as well, what are the central banks doing? They're stockpiling gold. They want their currencies to be backed by gold. Every single central bank out there is looking into what? A central bank digital currency. Central bank digital currencies that will be backed by gold, issued out on ledgers. Now do you start to see the path forward here when we're talking about the new financial system? Over here, we actually have Chair of the Bretton Woods Committee calls the Finternet a bold vision and touches on the following. Now, this got posted on October 28th by Subjective Views. We have Global Fast Payments Architecture, Project Nexus, 24/7 real-time gross settlement, Unified Ledger, and Project Agora. And if you guys don't know about Project Agora, you can check it out. It's a cross-border payment project with a lot of major banks tied to it. But check this out.
You are thinking about the second report in this series that the working group is going to release, and you're looking at the Global Fast Payments Architecture. So I thought maybe you would share a little bit with the audience today about kind of what problem, what hurdles the group is looking at, and maybe some of the early thinking around the recommendations.
So the G20 has looked at global payments, and they concluded that they were costly, complex, slow, and inefficient. And so they set some targets for the FSB and the CPMI, which is the group at the BIS that thinks about payment matters, to try to make progress to reduce the cost, increase inclusivity. And there's been some progress, but I don't think they're going to meet their objectives in terms of where they hope to get the cost of payments by 2027. The good news is there's a lot of good work going on. There have been a number of countries that have been very successful in developing instant payment systems, not just developing them, but also getting a take-up by their citizenry. Brazil, India, some of the Southeast Asian countries, they have instant payment systems that aren't just there in theory, but they're there in practice, and they're actually core to the payment systems. In other places, like the United States, like Europe, there are instant payment systems, but their share of use in terms of domestic payments is de minimis. And so it's a little hard to have an integrated global instant payment system if people in big regions like Europe and the US are not using them. So I think one conclusion of the paper is we got to figure out a way to make the instant payment systems in the important economies of the world more successful. I think the BIS has done a lot of great work through the BIS Innovation Hubs. They have a project called Project Nexus that actually is really, I think, very well thought through in terms of how you would actually knit these national instant payment systems together. They propose they, I think, conclude correctly that a hub and spoke system is a lot better than a whole bunch of individual countries trying to manage bilateral relationships with other countries, because obviously the number of linkages, if you do it bilaterally, goes up geometrically relative to just linking to a central hub. So I think the BIS is very much on the right track. But the problems are really getting the national instant payment systems viable. And two, making sure that the central banks keep moving towards 24/7 real-time gross settlement. Because if you don't have real-time gross settlement, you're always going to be left with some residual liquidity settlement risk in your instant payment systems. So that's another aspect where we need to do a little bit more work. There's another much broader vision that we're going to consider in the paper, which is the idea of a Finternet, so an internet that's for financial assets more broadly. The idea of the Finternet, and this is something that Augustine Carstens has written and talked a lot about, who's the general manager of the BIS. This is where you basically take a financial asset and you represent it as a token, and the tokens would be able to be settled on a unified ledger. And those tokens would actually be able to embed smart contracts that would execute automatically when a given set of conditions was triggered. It's a very different regime than just linking instant payment systems together. It's probably a more bold vision, but we're probably 20 years away from that if everything goes really, really well over the next coming decade. So it's more of a vision than, and we don't really have a path to going there. Although the BIS has also been pretty important here. They have a Project Agora where they've basically partnered with the IFI to bring together some private banks to figure out how could you actually take this forward. So I think, I think we're making some progress, but the progress is slower than what is desired.
Now, as we do really kind of think about this, he mentions the BIS quite a bit. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. You're still saying, Nick, we don't actually have any confirmation of, Ripple working with these big players or anything like that. Okay, let's take a step back. Let's go back 2 years ago where Ripple was in dialogue with over 20 central banks on CBDCs. Okay? And this is actually from Brooks Entwistle, the Senior Vice President of Customer Success and Managing Director of APAC and MENA at Ripple. Literally talking about how they're in discussions with 20 or more central banks. On top of this, back in 2018, they were working with 40 or 50 central banks across the globe. This was back in 2018. How many central banks are they actually in discussions with today? How many are they actually working with? We also know back in roughly, June or so, I think that this was a little bit older than June, but Brad Garlinghouse literally told us that they're working with about 10 governments around the world on CBDCs. Check it out.
That is Ripple has invested and is working with about 10 different governments around the world to do central bank digital currencies.
Now, he does mention how they're like a stablecoin that's just issued out by the government, but regardless, it proves to you that they are working with central banks. Central banks are going to Ripple, talking about how they could issue out their central bank digital currency utilizing, private XRP ledger technology. Doesn't really matter if it's the private XRP ledger or not. These things will still need to be bridged. Bridge currencies are so crucial when it comes to this because CBDC is issued out on a private ledger. It's a walled garden. It needs to have connections. It needs to be connected. But if we go over here, remember that Ripple joined the BIS Cross-Border Payments Task Force back in August of 2023. We know on this list, if you actually look at this list, all right, there's a lot of big players on here, major banks, massive giants around the world. The number one thing that I really want to mention from this document is the chairman, right? The guy who's actually the chair of all of this, the director of general market infrastructure and payments. And this is an individual from the European Central Bank. His name is Ulrich Binzel. Okay. This is a significant individual because if we go over here, interesting that Ulrich Binzel from the ECB is saying that Bitcoin is costly, slow, and inconvenient. XRP solves this. We have some strong connections between Ulrich and Ripple. Big shout out to Anderson for this. And when we actually look at this, we actually have Ripple Spell 2020. There we have. He's there. This is CBDCs driving towards digital. And it's funny because this is back in 2020. Okay. This is before all of these big discussions, before all of these, major spotlights were put on, the fact that Ripple is in discussions with so many central banks. Over here, we have Bitcoin has failed to become a global decentralized digital currency, instead falling victim to fraud and manipulation. Now, it doesn't matter if, you believe that statement or not. I know that's a lot of nonsense. They keep pushing this, but it doesn't matter, right? What they're actually saying here is, the approval of an ETF doesn't change the fact that Bitcoin is costly, slow, and inconvenient. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how much Bitcoin you hold. I don't care if you're a Bitcoin maxi. The facts are facts. All right. Technical wise, when we look at Bitcoin, and we're being fully technical here, it is a horrible network to transact on. I've had a lot of people try to buy meme coins and NFTs on the Bitcoin network just out of testing the network. It is an absolute nightmare to transact on Bitcoin. And then you have these people saying, oh, the Lightning Network. I don't care about the Lightning Network. It's a layer 2 network that has vulnerabilities. It barely works half the time. And it is a horrible experience as well, even with Lightning. Bitcoin is not usable for transactions. I don't care about anything that these people are saying about Bitcoin being around for the next 1,000 years. I don't care. Bitcoin is unusable for transactable use cases. And if we're thinking about that, any currency in this space, any network in this space that is usable, for, scalable transactions, tokenization use cases, things like that, it will completely overshadow Bitcoin in the long run. And I strongly believe that. But central banks are not choosing Bitcoin. Okay, central banks are coming to Ripple, and they're using private XRP ledger technology. We know this. We know that this is true as well. But what's crazier about all of this is when you look at the facts. Here we have going all the way back to 2023 from the BIS. Okay? Now, this was regarding combining money, assets, and information on a common programmable platform, a unified ledger. You know, this is many smart contracts can be bundled together like money Legos. Greater interoperability and automated transfers could ultimately benefit consumers. They're more convenient and cheaper products that are better tailored to their needs, thereby enhancing financial inclusion. Now, Smoke Dog, big shout out to Smoke Dog for this. We have major confirmation. The Bank for International Settlements, BIS Unified Ledger, and proposed idea of a Finternet is powered by Ripple's Interledger protocol. The Interledger protocol uses Ripple's internal cryptocurrency XRP to facilitate transfers. This is all documented. This is in quotes as well. I could actually open this up in a new tab just so that you guys can see it. Here we actually have the Interledger protocol. You have the application and wallets at the top. You have the registry, the Finternet name service, and then you have the Unified Ledger 1 and 2, where the Interledger protocol is at the bottom. And this is connecting to an immutable proof store 1 and 2. And this is the figure 1 Unified Ledger. Unified Ledger sit at the heart of the Finternet. And on the bottom, we have a Unified Ledger unifies all the blockchain networks using an Interledger protocol, which will seamlessly interoperate between the different networks and allows exchange of digital assets among them. And over here, we have the implementation of this system. Ripple's Interledger protocol can function in 2 modes, atomic mode and universal mode. In atomic mode, notaries become part of the system. There are an ad hoc group that verifies and validates transactions. Typically, atomic modes occur between trusted connector nodes between banks or financial service companies that might relate to others. The universal mode does not require notaries and can work between untrusted connectors. It uses Ripple's internal cryptocurrency XRP to facilitate transfers. Time constraints accompany the transfer. The transaction becomes null if it does not occur within a specific time frame. Now, outside of this, we go over here. Key features of the Finternet facilitates instant transactions, Ripple XRP. And if we actually open this up in a new tab, key features of the Finternet, real-time processing facilitates instant transactions. And then at the bottom, we actually have Ripple XRP. Now, there's also Solana on here, and they mentioned it being faster, but we know that Solana is actually a horrible network as well, considering the fact that it goes down consistently. It is not viable for these types of transactions or these types of use cases. At the end of the day, as we really kind of look at the connections with Ripple and all these central banks, I think that James Wallace, actually, who's in charge of CBDC discussions, also mentioned that they're at about roughly 15.37%, right? I think it was 15.37% of all central banks that were in discussions with Ripple. We don't have a confirmed number yet, and I don't think that we'll ever actually have a confirmed number at all when it comes to Ripple. It's almost like the partnerships that Ripple has. We'll never probably have any confirmation of this, but it's clear. It's clear to me that even with the institutional DeFi focus that Ripple is pushing, they are becoming a very large piece of the financial system. And they are working with some of the largest central banks out there to really kind of have all of this come together, and this vision of the internet of value, which is basically the Finternet, become, a possibility. So when we think about how big Ripple and XRP are truly becoming in the global financial system, even with the CPMI group that Ripple is on, all of the connections that Ripple has as well, and how they are pushing the XRP ledger and XRP forward through a lot of these initiatives, it's very clear to me that XRP holders will be very, very well off in the short, mid, and even long-term path ahead. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe to notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.